live from the West London Academy Northolt. I'm Nicky Campbell. Parents are usually delighted when their children want to follow the family's faith, but it's often a different matter when a teenager or young adult chooses a new religious direction, especially if the organisation they have chosen to follow has a charismatic leader, very different beliefs, or results in total separation from the family. In other words, they fear their beloved child has been recruited into what some would call a cult. So this morning we're asking just one very big question. Is there a difference between a cult and a religion? And to debate it we have some distinguished scholars, current members of several new religious movements, campaigners against cult techniques, concerned parents, and people whose lives have been changed forever. And they will be encouraged by our very lively London audience. As always, you can join in too. Just log on to bbc.co.uk/thebigquestions, where you'll find links to continue this discussion online. So how would you categorise the following? Opus Dei, the Children of God, the Church of Scientology, the Unification Church, Branch Davidian, Jews for Jesus. Their members may think of them as a religion, but their critics have called them cults. Is there a difference between a cult and a religion? We've got Glenn Carter here. Hi, Glenn. Head of the Raelian movement in this country, so it's the equivalent of having the Archbishop of Canterbury on.
Oh, thank you very much.
Let's just go through your beliefs just to remind people. You believe that we're all descended from aliens who came to Earth known as the Elohim?
Elohim, yes. I believe that life here was created by human beings, by scientists.
Right,
yes.
Right. And Jesus and Muhammad
were prophets of them.
And Buddha and Moses were all prophets who came from the Elohim.
Yes, yes.
And your founder, Claude Vorilhon, Rael,
yes.
He was not abducted. You wouldn't use the word abducted by aliens. He was contacted by aliens. What happened?
Yes, well, he was contacted. He went to a place and he was given a message to share with humanity, to make no profit out of it, to make no money, just to publish the book and basically give it away, which is what he's been doing for 40 years.
And the message is?
The message that life here was created by human beings, just like we as a scientific society are going forward and beginning to learn how to create life ourselves.
Cloning's big in your
as cloning, creating unique life forms from scratch using genetic techniques, to then that we will, as we evolve in our scientific development, go out to other planets and create, like we have a biosphere in Britain, we will go out and we will create unique indigenous life to a planet somewhere. That is what has happened here.
So we will be the Elohim of the future.
Exactly.
For other
that is the never-ending cycle.
Right, okay. And for you, it's immortality is through cloning.
Well, all we believe is that there is no ethereal God, no sort of mysticism in that respect. So what we believe is that there is only an afterlife if science creates one. That there isn't. We don't do our work. We're not evangelical at all. What people come to us, they find a book in a bookshop or they search us out online. But if they come to help other people find that message if they wish to, not for a reward of eternal life. That's because we don't believe there is one unless science creates one.
And how do you feel about the derision and the contempt that you get from established religions, mainstream religions?
I feel a great deal of compassion for the mind that behaves in that way, to be honest with you. I feel sorry for people who hate without understanding, who condemn without really researching and trying to understand what I believe, and that it's benevolent, it's not in any way aggressive to anybody. As I say, we don't go out and grab people and induct people. People stay with their families. They live their lives. I'm an actor. I've been an actor for 30 years.
Has it affected your career since you were known as a Raelian?
Since I became publicly known as a Raelian, I went from being possibly the top 1 or 2% earners in my area of acting into being pretty much unemployable for doing nothing. I was the same person 10 years before that, but I haven't worked to the degree I used to work for 10 years now.
Really?
But that is a level of discrimination which I don't think is intentional. I don't say people that say he's in a cult, therefore he shouldn't be allowed to work. I think people are fearful, and they say, because what I hear is that, oh, he's not necessarily a good member of a company. Or
so something's going. Francesca, is this, people are derisive of beliefs like this. Is it any different from, some would argue it's no different from believing in a virgin birth or resurrection?
I think there's no difference at all between a cult and a religion in terms of what it's doing for the members of those religious groups. It's fulfilling people think a cult is something that's different from the norm, but what's one religion to judge another religion? It's about size. Size matters, and I think it's about size. And as long as people aren't harming other people, I mean, that's an accusation that's made to cults, that they're harmful, but then mainstream religions can be harmful.
Francesca, what about all the academic material, I'm referring to academic material because you're a member of the academic community, that supports the argument that cults are using psychological coercion. We know what these techniques are, we know what the end result is,
exactly.
we know what the impact on
Ian,
so free choice is removed.
1 second, are the Raelians dangerous?
The Raelians represent a group about which we're very concerned, and I would equate them with the Moonies. You mentioned the Jews for Jesus earlier, and that I would see in a different category altogether and not a problem. But for legal reasons, I have to word things in a particular way because these groups have a tiresome habit of suing.
Could you say what the problem with the Raelians is, so that we understand why you have a concern about them?
I have to.
I know nothing about them.
I have to couch this in delicate word things very, very carefully because I might have to prove certain things I could say in a court of law.
But what is it that
what I
bothers
can
you about
say is that the same concerns that families have that call me when they have loved ones who've become involved in one of the groups about which we're concerned, in terms of those loved ones becoming alienated, changing for the worse and so on, are the same things that we've heard about people who've become involved in the Raelians. And I've talked to people who are ex-members of the Raelians.
What you're actually using there are psychological manipulative techniques to turn the opinion of an audience against the Raelian movement. Even now, just wait 1 second. You're saying, I could offer information, but I can't just in case, but take it from me, I'm a scholar, that you and those people are bad. What you haven't done is say anything that's real. You've just passed an opinion. You've used manipulative techniques to do that. And yet I am sat here, 1 second, yet I am sat here being honest with you, be honest with me.
Glenn, thank you.
Let me talk about
Rabbi in a minute.
the group represented by our friend next door to you.
We're talking about the Raelian movement.
Unification Church.
The Unification Church was involved in a landmark case in 1980. It finished up in the High Court where the Moonies sued the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail won the case. The Daily Mail had accused the Moonies of what it described as brainwashing and breaking up families, and it proved its case in the High Court.
Brainwashing is impossible.
We're not talking about an academic debate here. We're talking about something that's been proven.
I think if we're going to go back,
Simon.
if we're going to go back in time a bit, one of the interesting things is Reverend Moon told the British leadership very clearly, don't sue on this. It's a waste of time. It's not good.
And a mistake was made.
We lost the court case, and then they got the government to set up a commission to investigate our charitable status, and they did way more work on that than they did in the court case, on the libel case. And their final conclusion, there was no case to be had for our charitable status. Let me finish what I'm saying. And I've forgotten who it was from the anti-new religious movement.
You won't say the C word, will you?
Who spoke in the libel case, but certainly an MP made an apology in the House of Commons for what he said in the libel case about our movement. And, interestingly enough, just about a couple of years ago, we buried the hatchet with the Daily Mail. We buried the hatchet with a lot of media organisations that we've had a lot of misunderstanding with. And I think new religious movements can be a bit like a little bit obnoxious teenagers sometimes, in that they're not very good at communicating everything they're trying to get across. But
all right. Listen, we'll come to you a little bit more later on, Simon. I want to investigate exactly what the difference is between a religion and a cult. Aren't religions, Rabbi Shockett, just successful cults?
No, because a religion in the first instance is predicated on the belief in a deity, and a cult in the first instance is predicated usually on the belief in a particular man who concocted something which he then chose to define as a religion, and invariably then preys on people, on the vulnerable in particular, looks to lure them in, It's often about being able to create a certain kind of power, money base, and whatever else besides.
On that basis,
But let me
you
just say
argue that
this.
the
Let me
beginning
just
of
say
the
this.
Christian church
That's the
was
essential
exactly the
difference
same.
between.
We'll come to that.
That is the essential difference between. That is the essential difference between a religion and a cult. And I'll only say then this on that basis. I think it's wrong that you should have been discriminated against in your work on account of your personal beliefs. That shouldn't have happened for whatever the reasons, fear or whatnot. My single issue with any cult or any person's individual belief is when you go out there and you look to lure other people, whether out of other faiths or out of no faith, and get them to try and embrace your belief.
Like, do you believe the Jews for Jesus? Wait, like the Labour Party, he said. You believe the Jews for Jesus do this, don't you?
The Jews for Jesus do this in a very big way.
Jews for Jesus.
Jews for Jesus are a bunch of Jewish people who've come to see that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. We believed, as you all know, classic Christian belief, that Jesus died for our sins, rose from the dead. This is what we believe. And we're like, so who would I share this with? I'd share it with my people, with other Jewish people, just like me. So I believe he's the Jewish Messiah. If somebody doesn't want to talk to me, I don't lure them, I don't try. I stand on the street, I wear a big t-shirt so everyone knows exactly what I believe. And I say, hey, what do you think about Jesus? Don't want to talk? Don't talk. Want to talk? Let's talk more.
But I don't stand on the street and stop, I don't know, vulnerable Christians or whoever else besides and say, hey, what do you think about Judaism? I don't look to lure them into my faith.
That's your choice.
I grant you that, but that's why I say anything that essentially takes away other people's critical thinking, and particularly, and I know a lot about Jews for Jesus over the years, and I've encountered so many of them, particularly those who are vulnerable and have their minds, if you like, ensnared in some kind of brainwashing technique. And
what's that different about bringing up a child in your religion and the fact that they're born in that religion, they grow up in that religion, they know nothing else? In what way is their mind not ensnared in a sense?
They are always left with an open mind to be able, and there are many, sadly, if you like, Jews who walk away from their Jewish faith. I know, again, categorically that Jews for Jesus uses clear brainwashing techniques, befrienders, what have you, things that are done to ensnare them.
But you just believe you've got good news, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I just hang out with people in coffee shops. It's, Starbucks, Costa, these are my offices. This is where I hang out with people. I don't really use a technique other than, the Bible, I suppose.
Jews for Jesus is a deceptive term.
Really?
That's one of the problems.
Why is Jews for Jesus a deceptive term, Doctor?
Because to be Jewish, you don't believe in Christ, okay? So Jews for Jesus is a deception that Jewish people can retain their Judaism while believing in Jesus Christ. And they use many deceptive techniques. They have people that they say are rabbis who were never rabbis and were never Jewish. And they target the Jewish community during vulnerable times such as Christmas, when it's very alienating to be Jewish. It's like the entire world is Christian. And they run advertisements at those times to reach people who might be in pain.
Are they dangerous?
Are they dangerous?
Yeah.
They're dangerous to particular people if they alienate them from their families and if they're using deceptive techniques.
And if we ever use a deceptive technique, I'd love somebody to let
the
me know.
The name itself is deceptive.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. Jesus is Jewish. All the disciples were Jewish. And if he is the Jewish Messiah, what could be more Jewish than believing in Jesus? I mean, what could be more Jewish? Now, you disagree he's the Messiah. You disagree that he died to cover your
You need to give Rabbi Shockett a leaflet. While we're on the subject of Christina, while we're on the subject of Jesus, I'd like to quote the Bible to you. I know, and a book of which you are a big fan. Jesus said, and this was Matthew chapter 10, verse 37, "He that loveth father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." That's a pretty cultish message from Jesus.
The very interesting thing was when I was looking at cults for a very different idea, I realized that the description of the classical cult is to have a charismatic leader, Jesus, who is Muhammad, who is saying to his followers, this is a radical teaching, and you've got to leave your family, you've got to leave everything that feels comfortable and that you know, and you must go forth, and you will find that you are alienated from your surroundings. So all of that sounds like a cult, or it sounds like a religion. But the thing that none of us have mentioned is values. What religion asks you to do is to live by your day-by-day values. Values that are transcendental, that, ask yourself, when somebody says to you, are you a member of a cult or are you a member of a religion? Ask yourself, what do I do for others? Because that's what religion asks. What cults ask is, what are you doing for me, your leader? What are you doing for us, our little community?
Let me bring Francesca back, then I'll come to you, Livingston. Francesca, respond to that point, the difference, a clear difference that Christina has identified.
I think it's very hard to say that religions rather than cults ask, what do you do for other people? There are a lot of cultic movements that do an awful lot of charity work, for example. So I don't think it's a fair distinction to draw.
But charity is not the only...
But no, for example, but the main point is about perceptions of damage, and it's outside perceptions of damage versus inside perceptions of damage.
What do you mean by inside perceptions?
What I was about to tell you is the person within this particular religious group being damaged somehow, psychologically, physically, sexually, and you can't draw a distinction there either between a religion and a cult. For example, we all know that, it's people that are dangerous, not necessarily religions per se or cults per se. It's the people within them. So if you've got someone on a power trip within a Christian church or within a Jewish community, you may as well have a person who's on a power trip in any other kind of way.
Yes, except that with a religion, you have a much wider body, which will rein in the power crazy.
This is the key point. A religion and a cult, the main difference is size. That's the main difference.
Not at all.
Not at all.
We just talk some of the cults are very small as well.
We got a clear thing there. The main difference is size. We'll all get a chance. It's a long program on one topic. Don't worry. But Livingston's been trying to come in, and I want to speak to Livingston. I want everyone to hear Livingston's story. Livingston, you were at Waco.
That's correct.
That 51-day siege, you lost members of your family in the siege, in the fire. You then served 14 years for your role in defending.
Well, actually, we were.
And David Koresh was the man in defending the centre and defending his mission. You believe that he was a prophet. He saw an angel, didn't he?
That's correct. On a visit to Jerusalem in 1985. And that's how he came by the message that was the essence of our group, which takes me back to something that Christina said. I understand the values part that you spoke of, and we embrace those too. But it was the pursuit of the truth, the knowledge of God, that was the principal driving force.
What was David Koresh like? Give us an idea.
Well, much like you.
There you go. I doubt it.
You don't play the guitar. I suppose that's the only difference, huh?
Okay, they say these leaders are charismatic, these cult leaders are charismatic.
Not in the sense of those stereotypes.
No, okay.
He's no different than your person who's sincerely trying to find God. And you're putting your entire being in that effort.
And it's all about the end times.
If that makes you charismatic, then okay.
Okay. But people followed him because the message was the important.
No. It's not him that was followed.
It's the message.
The truth. The same truth that those who were there, the members who were there, was the same truth that David followed. David was merely the point of reference through which that truth was given.
Right.
By reason of the fact that he had that initial experience by which the truth came. Now, we can go into a dissecting of that. From that, you get a better understanding of what.
But you very much believe that message is true. It's true now as it was then, and it's an eternal truth.
Absolutely.
And we are in the end times.
Indeed.
You don't look back and you say that was madness. You absolutely stand by everything.
Absolutely. There is no reason for. As a matter of fact, the events that have unfolded since then, in the 20 years since Waco, have corroborated all that we held true in terms of what's going on in the world right now and what is to come as a result of the events that are now unfolding. So it encompasses the worldview. It actually extends way into the future. The Messianic kingdom that will go on for another 1,000 years, and from then we go into eternity itself. This is a hope, the hope for mankind in the present situation. Now, only as you can see it in the context of the truth that we held can you really understand why the events of 1993 turned out the way they did.
Why did they have to separate themselves into a compound? Why was that necessary?
Well, it's no different to going to a university. Your children come and they go to university, except that we're dealing with spiritual truths.
What about the guns that were stockpiled?
I understand. I knew you would come to that.
It seemed relevant. Why were the guns there?
Well, for one, we were called that we would be attacked. So the objective of the guns was as a deterrent. Now you got to understand this in the context.
You were called that you would be attacked. How do you mean?
Well, part of our message dealt with prophecy.
But you were attacked by the agency because of the guns.
Well, that's
the
what
Alcohol,
they,
Tobacco and Firearms Agency.
That's what they said.
David wasn't a very good prophet, though, was he? Because he couldn't prophesy what actually happened. I think
That's very
look, in
unfair.
fairness,
No.
in fairness here, we're talking
If
about
you're going to make a
beliefs.
statement like that and then just jump to something else, let me address it.
We're talking.
When you say David was not a good prophet,
I'm just picking up on a single issue that you mentioned. Most of this, as far as I'm concerned, is irrelevant because I would fight for your
To you,
right
it's
to believe whatever you choose, as long as you choose it. The issue is, what is the difference between a cult and a religion? We're talking about the difference
Was this a
between.
cult, clearly?
We're talking.
Was this a cult?
We're talking about a group there that was certainly of concern, and I would have had the same concerns about it as I did at the time, as I do about the other groups that we've referred to earlier today. We're talking about a difference here between conversion and coercion. I mean, Robert, you talked about the problems associated with evangelism and proselytizing. My understanding is that the word proselyte meant someone who had converted to Judaism originally, but that practice did cease, by and large, in the majority of the Jewish community a few hundred years ago. There are still some that do proselytize, but only within the Jewish community. There's nothing wrong with proselytizing. There's nothing wrong with sharing your perspective.
Sharing the message.
And giving people a chance to exercise free choice.
Well,
what we're concerned with is that cults remove free choice and do so very effectively through the use of techniques of psychological
But you
coercion.
keep using that phrase, they remove your blah, 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 blah,
Very
blah. To me, it's
quickly,
just a
in a
blah,
matter
blah.
of 3 or 4
But the thing is, you
days,
don't
usually.
actually know that because, I mean, I run the Raylan movement in this country and we don't do anything other than what we're doing now, which is debate.
Exactly.
We debate and we talk about ourselves and we run campaigns against things like paedophilia, against bad behaviour and the oppression of human beings.
Yeah.
And yet you're sat there saying that we're concerned about groups like this. Well, I'm concerned about you. And I could just as easily cast aspersions over your good name by saying, I've heard things about you that I'm not prepared to, that I'm not prepared to say in this programme, but I've heard things about your sexual habits.
Well, this
Now,
is
what I'm saying is those things.
I mean, that's
what I'm
outrageous.
saying is
That's
those.
outrageous to
That
say
is.
something like that.
What I'm saying is those things are easy to say. They
Right.
are easy to say. They're not very easy to back up. What I'm saying is
It is
that's
very easy
exactly
to
the
back up
technique.
the whole
That's
issue
exactly the
that
technique.
cults use
That is
psychological
exactly the
coercion.
technique that you are using over my
learning
philosophy.
colleagues here.
I want to come on to one of our learning colleagues. Professor, wait a minute. Professor, we have, without casting any more aspersions about each other, Professor, we had something really fascinating there from Livingston. It was all about truth. This is the truth. And is there something in that various groups, whether they are be a religion or a cult, we can get the situation where they think they have a monopoly on the truth.
Can I just
and that's what we're getting at. 1 second, let's get Professor on this.
Well, most of the time, I would say that all organisations have the propensity to be manipulative or to damage people, and it's about organisational practices, not about beliefs. And groups are all on a continuum. Not all groups end up with mass suicides, thankfully, not all organisations. But the fact is that on occasions, the belief system, if it does take over people psychologically, and there is evidence for that in the literature, it doesn't happen in all religious groups, it doesn't happen in all groups that are on the cultic spectrum. But when it does happen, as with the Branch Davidians, it can have catastrophic effects on individuals and on their families.
There's a statement that Christ made 2,000 years ago. I and the Father are one. In the pursuit of truth and of God, it is designed to bring us into a being or a state of being that is